about something, it's good for China.
I'm sorry, Deb, what was the last part of that?
Oh, I was just saying it's good for China like it if we have a lot of internal disputes about these things. So it's good for them if we're still half of the country wants to support Ukraine, half does whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like
no,
it's
yeah,
good for them that we
100%.
have a lot of strife.
100%. Listen, China's all about money. And they got 3 billion people. They got an economy that, is tenuous at this point in time. So, but they're smart. They play the outside game. They stir up the
Long
stuff and
one.
then they stand back and they watch. So, it's interesting how that goes. I'm gonna let me just get the live stream going and then we'll end I will introduce you guys and we will get going. Okay, so being that the two-way, the morning meeting is off this week, we are doing a substitute morning meeting. My name's Professor Kenny, along with Dean from Ohio, who does all of that great music for us and gives us very good questions, and of course Deborah Knox, who's in New York. So, what we're going to do today, some of the topics we have to discuss, and we have a lot, is we have Kilmer Abrego Garcia and what's happening with him. We have Trump with the National Guard possibly going to Chicago and then possibly going to Baltimore, which I definitely want to get into because I know a lot about Baltimore and its mayor, Brandon Scott. Um, and we were just talking about how Putin is going to China. There's a little summit going on. He's going to meet with Xi Jinping. And also, we didn't talk about it in our pregame, but I did see that Ukraine was attacking. They're having some success attacking Russia's energy. So they're hanging in there, the Ukrainians. We won't have Andres today. He's away. He might pop in, but he's away. Dean's gonna be with us today and tomorrow, and then Chris Simmons is gonna come in and take over. And then Deborah will be on as long as she can. If not, we will get a substitute. Maybe Haley will do it for us. And we're just gonna, try and keep it light. Um, and keep the discussion going. I apologize for how we got. I talked to Aaron about this yesterday, how we got too much into our own stuff yesterday and kind of lost control of the show. That was my fault as the host, but we had a lot of good information there. It's just that it was a little didactic, and we don't need that. So let's begin with Kilmer Abreu Garcia. Okay, so from what we know, from what I understand, is he checked himself into uh, immigration, ICE, whatever, Baltimore, and he's already been brought up on charges for human trafficking. Yeah, the good Maryland man that he is, right? He's already been brought up on the because that was how this whole thing started, by the way. It was human trafficking, right, in Tennessee. It was in so he's brought up on charges again, and apparently the government has offered him a deal where if he admits to the human trafficking and then serves whatever sentence he gets, then they will deport him to Costa Rica. That's been the offer. But now it's kind of changed. It's almost like he's being coerced because it's like, wait a minute, if you don't accept this deal, we're going to deport you to the Uganda, which, God only knows what'll happen to him there. But Deborah had a good, funny point about sending him to Uganda. Where should he go, Deborah, if he
Well,
goes
I
to,
thought Mandami could make it into a campaign stunt and say, "Of course, you can come stay in my family compound."
that's
So,
right. So at least he won't be alone. Like he'll have somebody to take care of him, right? Dean, what do you think about this whole situation?
Well, I think this is pretty much emblematic of just the dangers of illegal immigration to begin with. I thought it was originally because he had ties, he had gang ties. So MS-13. I know that the human trafficking came around a little bit later, but I don't see this as I see this as his legal arguments are playing out, and the prosecution is doing what prosecution does. Hey, take door number one. This is the easiest way. If you plead guilty, you'll do your time, and we'll send you to Costa Rica, and you'll be a free man. If you don't, you make this more difficult than it needs to be. Then other options for deportation, including Uganda, are on the table. I see this as more level setting the playing field, getting to the point where, yes, were mistakes made early on. I would have preferred this to be handled differently, but we're at this point right now. He's illegally in the country. His options are in front of him, and he's got a decision to make.
Okay.
Can I have a question for you guys in terms
Sure.
of plea deals? Because, I don't follow them enough to know there's quite a differential between getting to hang in Costa Rica and going to Uganda. Is this an unusual delta between if you agree with us, you get this and you get that in terms of the justice system? Or is this like kind of extra cruel and unusual? I don't know, but I'm curious about that.
Well, it's
Well, I don't.
definitely. Go ahead, Dean. Go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
going to say I wouldn't call it cruel or unusual
I don't
punishment,
know. That's
but
why I don't, yeah, I'm wondering about it.
yeah, yeah. Is it? I'd go so far to say it's inventive at this stage, but giving someone options for their how they're going to proceed, I think that's pretty normal. As far as just normal, somebody comes in, look, you do this, or you complete it down to this. What would you like? And I would always imagine option two to be a little bit more difficult. I go back to the root of this that you're probably going to see some more unusual things because of the unusual place we find ourselves with, 10 plus million, um, um, however you want to characterize it, to be kind, folks that should not be in this country or did not come through in legal means. So I would assume that as things ramp up, securing the border was the first step. The second step are going to be some things that we probably haven't seen before. But my hope is that most people will take door number one, and that's take that money that's offered to them and choose to self-deport.
We
Yeah.
were just
Go ahead, Deb. Go ahead.
Just a quick thing too, because we were talking before we got on about just the value of deterrence. And so, I mean, I'm feeling like this has been made very visible, and then we're having these potential outcomes with like Uganda looking really unattractive, right? As these test cases of let's show you what might happen. We want to scare you, right? So don't think of it like don't think of coming here. And this seems like an instance of that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, and some of that. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, listen, we have to be honest here. This is not the norm. This is definitely a listen, listen, Trump and the administration are determined to hang this guy. Now, I'm not saying he's a good guy, and if they get him on the human trafficking, okay. So my position would be just bring him to trial and then let see what happens. He's going to get deported anyway because he's here illegally. But bring him to trial, see what happens, and then figure out what you want to do. You don't. Why even go into this Uganda thing? But obviously, it's just to even avoid a trial. I guess it's just like plead guilty. We'll sentence you. Um, and then that's how we'll roll. So I understand it, but it's really not. I don't think this is very cool. If you you know what I'm saying, it's like, hey, we'll send you to the gulag or we'll send you to Florida. It's like, what you try that I don't know how American that really is. When it comes to this. Go ahead,
All
Mike.
this stuff was his choice. Like he
Yeah,
he was the one that chose to put himself multiple times illegally in the United States.
I
So,
get
I
it.
mean,
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. It's just that, when this is the headline, you can go to Costa Rica or you can go to Uganda, meaning if you don't take the Costa Rica deal, you're going to Uganda. That's coercion and that's not cool.
Sounds like that should be a title of a song. You're going to Uganda.
Yeah, it could
I'll get
be.
on that one right away,
Yeah,
Deb. I'll get
it
that
could be.
song out.
Yeah. So listen, guys, that would to keep your hands raised. We're going to bring everybody in at the end. We're just going to talk for a little while, and then we'll follow it like the morning meeting. But so we're going to move on. But we're going to transition this because it's kind of relative in some ways. So Trump is now talking about sending troops into Chicago, and I didn't hear anything from Pritzker, which is interesting. But what I found kind of shocking was they were like, "Oh, now the National Guard in D.C. is arming themselves," and I'm like, "I didn't realize they weren't carrying weapons to begin with. Like, what's the point of being in the military if you're not carrying your weapon?" But that's me. So, but
Oh,
now,
right, right,
now,
control.
yeah, I get it. But now he wants to move into Chicago, and I'm going to keep talking about this because I got an interesting point here. Then they're talking about Baltimore. Baltimore is a different animal, and I think Trump might be spreading himself politically too thin. Baltimore, the mayor of Baltimore is a young African American guy named Brandon Scott. I raised this guy's name several times in the chat, in the two-way, in the beginning when it was Trump and Kamala going head to head. And I was saying how this guy, what was after Trump won, like who are the new stars of the Democratic Party? And I was like, what about Brandon Scott? And nobody, I got zero, I got crickets, right? And if you look up Brandon Scott, the guy knows how to handle his city. His city is, predominantly African American. There's a lot of crime. So instead of, just trying to arrest people or ignoring it, he put programs in to try and uh, unite his community and into getting out of the crime business. And part of that is financial because obviously when you're depressed areas, you're going to have crime. It doesn't matter, if you're in, Appalachia, whatever it is, whatever the race is, it's all about economics, right? So if you don't have good economic standings, you are going to commit crimes because you got to feed your family or whatever the case is, or you're not learning the best way to handle justice. And he put in programs like giving um 18 to 24-year-olds with children like $1,000 a month, trying to get them out of this malaise of, having these children and then you can't pay for them and all of this kind of thing. So I think my point is I'm not even talking about Chicago. Chicago's what I fear in Chicago is that it'll wind up being shootouts between the National Guard and some of these neighborhoods. But going now if you extend it to Baltimore, when Baltimore's kind of happy with the way things are going, I think that's a bridge too far, and I think this is where he's going to overstep, and now it'll blow back on him. So, what do you think about that, Dean?
Well, first, let's just talk a little bit about the success that DC has had. Different circumstance. It's a federal district. Therefore, President Trump didn't need to do anything other than declare that there was an issue, and he went in. At least in the short time, and I would say it's not enough time to really say if it's going to be successful or not. In the short time that it's been in place, two things happen. One, the DC police wanted or applauded the help, and crime has gone down. We've gone so many days, what is it, 9, 10 days
And I think
without a murder at this point. So I think at some point, if you just take a look at it, you can say it's a success. I would agree with you on as he moves out to Chicago and Baltimore and other cities that, conservatives would say, look, that's a states' rights unless issue. The state should take care of that. The city should take care of their own, unless there is some place where governance is actually faltering. And the fact that crime has swung down in all of these cities, they're still number one, two, three, and four: DC, Baltimore, New York City, and Chicago. But there has been, I've heard, double-digit decreases in crime year over year. The problem is, as a political issue, you've got two things. One, you've got the police in all of those districts saying, yes, we could use the extra help. So you got the Democrats on the wrong side of that. And the the Democrats, if they're taking a look at this and saying, look, everything's fine over here, we're doing a fine job, and still the crime is high, that is just a bad look. I wish that they would take a different view and look at this as more of a, or get on the right side of this issue from my perspective, and take a look at it as this is an area that we can look to for bipartisan support. And Dan Turrentine had something that he talked about last week about make crime reduction. It was a couple of things. Make crime reduction by bipartisan push. Don't say we're fine here when the people on the ground are saying no, we're not fine. When the police are saying no, we could use more help. Make it bipartisan. Say yes, we could. Get their hand on the wheel rather than use it as a cudgel against a quote unquote presidential overreach. Target the highest crime cities. What else did he say? A smarter, and work towards a smarter approach that works on all levels. I just thought Dan was taking a look at this. Hey, can we turn the narrative? The Democrats basically said, no, we're fine. We're going to stay on this side of the issue. And you're putting President Trump on the side of lessening crime by all means necessary. I think that's hard to justify.
Yeah. So, Deborah, what do you think about this what do you think about what Dean says in terms of the Democrats and the political
Yeah.
conundrum they're in right now?
I have, I have multiple thoughts about this. There was like five going at the same time. I find it hard to see the Dems turning around and suddenly becoming strong on crime, just given the rhetoric and even sort of belief systems about, for instance, that certain instances of crime are because of systemic issues, and therefore, we can't be penalizing people in certain ways because of larger structural things. I don't know how they're going to make that turn, and suddenly just back away from that exactly. So that feels like a tricky position for them to do. I
Deborah,
would
can I
say,
say if they can move away from defund the police to need more funding for the police, and that's one of the other things that we've heard over the last couple of weeks, that even Dan called it out and said, if they, to my point, if they can do that, I think some of these other systemic issues, you're right, those are important, and those aren't going to
no, I'm
change.
not. I'm not even saying that they're right about that, or they're not right about it. I'm just saying more the intellectual, having invested, made these statements, saying this is where we are ideologically, to back up from that and do this. Like this is unless you
Uh,
just do it and you just don't answer questions. Why did you change? Think about Kamala, who changed some of her positions and
mhm.
didn't really have any explanation for why, and so people didn't trust her. What do you mean? Why are you suddenly thinking a different way? So I don't know how they will be able to make that move and suddenly act like they think that this is a way to handle crime in cities or something like that. So I don't know how they're going to do that. I just want to comment more generally on having the. I mean, I have my issues about just seeing military going in. Although Kathy Hochul has used a National Guard in the subway here, so we do see these people. It has been done by a Democrat. I'm worried about the sustainability of this. It's like, fine, they come in, people are scared, people behave for a little while. Like, I want to see them somehow shore up the existing police forces. I don't know whether something happens that there's more hiring or there's training that's going on. Like, you can do a little bit with this sort of surprising people, scaring, going, okay, we mean business. But if you just go back out again and you just have the same conditions on the ground, I don't know how much that's going to affect change long term. So I'm wanting to see what they're planning to do about that, if anything.
Right. And here's the way I look at it. And I just think of Nina Turner from the group chat, right? So Nina Turner is probably the only person I know skilled enough to argue this point for the Democrats and win. Um, the point is, and I see people putting it in the chat, is, it's not the norm to have military in the streets, right? That's not the norm. Now, my argument is always that don't be worried about the military. They're not the boogeyman. The police are more the boogeyman than the military. But in our normal everyday society, you don't walk around with the military in the streets, right? So the the problem is for the Dems is they need to figure out a way, and I'm not skilled enough to even make the argument. Nina would do it better than I would, but they need to be able to somehow say this is not the norm. We do agree crime is high. Why is the big bad beautiful bill not supplying money to help the states hire the police they need to get the crime down, kind of thing? But then that becomes a debate about, well, when you did have the money, you still didn't get the crime
Well,
down.
you're saying defund them. Yeah.
Yeah, or right, or don't say defund them, right? So it becomes that kind of argument. So I just think, we'll move on from this in a second. I'm gonna put a stamp on, unless Mike, you wanted to throw a comment. And by the way, Mike, you've been doing great in the chat with the. Why don't you bring that up before we put a cap on this topic?
What?
With the prosecuting these crimes and stuff like.
Oh yeah, well, quite a few years ago, St. Louis City had a problem with our AG, or what would be a DA. We call them a circuit attorney, Kim Gardner. She essentially was at the end of 8 years of messing it up and not prosecuting things. There was like a famous, there was unfortunately infamous, I should say. There was a teenage volleyball player who lost part of her leg, because of the traffic, or the criminal activity was so bad that she got ran over. Anyway, this happened, and it kind of caused the spotlight to go on. It was kind of the last straw that broke the camel's back, amongst many things. And they essentially lost confidence in her because, like, her court cases were a mess. She had like a third of the staff that she started out with. I mean, it just fell apart on top of itself. So the state of Missouri, being red, came in and said, we gotta do something about this. And the city kind of fought back a little bit. They kind of made a deal to get her off to the side and get her ass out of the picture because she wasn't doing her job. But that's what happened in St. Louis. And Chicago, I know, is just as bad. I don't know if they still have their DA, that Kim Fox, I think, that did. I think she's passed on other things, like with the Smollett
Right.
lies and all that stuff.
And
But
don't forget, we had talked about this earlier, Dean and Deborah and I. We talked about how another problem is a lot of these blue cities kind of lowered the standard with criminalization, right? So like DC did it. I mean, we saw Corinne Pierre, whatever the hell, Corinne Jean
I'm
Pierre. I can't
here.
even remember her name. So
KJP.
yeah, KJP. We saw her say, at the podium, how they changed all of the standards of arrests and prosecution, and how the laws are changing. And I brought it up to you folks before in the pregame, how my experience in San Francisco. Jackie's coming in now. Her and I were in San Francisco visiting friends of hers, and we were parked on this restaurant had this hill that you park in. So I front parked in, and we were on our road trip. So I had the whole car was filled. It was a rent a car, and smash and grab. They smashed the window in and grabbed my laptop. That's all they grabbed, was my laptop, and took off. And I called the police. And the guy was there driving away, and I got his license plate, the whole thing. Called the
Oh, wow.
police, and they were just like, no arrest is going to be happening. No police are going to come. You just give your statement over the phone, and then they give you the police report number over the phone. So now I could go take the renter car back to the airport and get a new renter car because they destroyed the whole back window in San Francisco because we had flown into San Francisco. So, that's when you don't have crime being enforced, you're going to have these problems. So,
Anyone that has seen a shoplifting in a drugstore, a Walmart, or some type of retail store, walked out the door and to see the staff do nothing, would say, anyone that's seen that would say, "Yep, Professor Kenny, that tracks with what I've seen before with the police." There, if you allow that to continue to happen, and this goes back to broken windows theory. If you allow those broken windows to stay broken, then this is the next step. This is what to expect, and it's going to remain a two-pronged approach. You've got to have the police to be able to enforce the laws that are on the books. And then you've also got you have to have a prosecutor that's going to prosecute these crimes and not let people just walk. It's obviously, as Deborah was saying, a bigger problem, but it's you can start. It takes a while to turn things around, but there's things that you can do right now, and I think this is an option. At least now we're talking about it, bringing the National Guard in. I'm on the fence on it as well, but now we're at least talking about crime as a major issue in these cities.
And crime has always been a Republican winning issue. Always. It's always been a winning issue for Republicans, always, for 200 years.
I've never
So,
understood that.
yeah.
If Democrats are the little person and taking care of the little person, they get shellacked more than anyone else with crime. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Go
interesting.
ahead, finish.
I can speak to that because growing up as a Democrat household, there was this idea, this isn't necessarily true, but I grew up with this, that, well, Republicans will amp up. Like they're scared, they're fearful, they multiply these ideas. Like I even remember when Trump would say in the first term, there's a caravan coming, all these people are coming. And so whether it's true or not, Democrats will believe that Republicans exaggerate. Again, I'm not saying that this is true. So there is like a factor of, okay, they said this, it's probably half of that or whatever. Again, I'm not saying it's true, but I do think
Mhm.
there's like a calculation of, I think they're being a bit alarmist. And I think that factors in here about assessing, the state of affairs and then the difference between the sense of urgency and even emergency quality that the Republicans feel and the Democrats being like, oh, okay, it's bad, but it's not
Good
that
point.
bad,
It's not just the
whatever.
message, it's the messenger. It's who's saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and again, I'm not saying it's correct, the assessment, but I grew up with that all the time. Like, oh, they're going on about crime again.
Yeah.
What else do they do? Right. And so
Yeah.
there's not even a critical assessment of what's actually being said. And I do think they've even talked about, I think in brain studies, this in terms of the, you know, Republican Democrat, the sort of sensitivity to threat that Republicans might be a bit higher. And it's like it's useful in cases when there really is a threat, right? Like I think you want to know that. And there could be potentially more sensitivity than maybe is merited sometimes, but I feel like we need both. I think we kind of need both.
Yeah. It's definitely, like I said, it's a winning issue for Republicans, and Democrats need to kind of get back in the game when it comes to this kind of issue, because they're in a box right now. They can't get out of their own way with this. That's why Trump keeps doing what he's doing, because it's winning for him politically. All right, we're gonna do a little. This will be our last topic, and then we're gonna get to everybody's questions. I saw a lot of good stuff in the chat. Dan Oliva, I'm looking forward to your comments because I know you have a lot to say about this issue, and it's valid points. So last thing is we're gonna get a little back to Ukraine and Russia. So it looks like Ukraine's been fighting back and kind of having some success attacking Russia's energy. Where, I guess their oil and stuff. So that's a positive. But the new message is the new news is that Putin is going to meet with Xi with China. It's part of this summit, the Shanghai Cooperation kind of thing that was formed in 2001. It's all the stands. We were joking about it this morning in the pregame. It's like Kazakhstan, you know, Dr. Professor
Uzbekistan.
Kenny Stan, Dean from Ohio Stan, Deborah Knox Stan, all of those stands, all of those countries. So, but it's obviously Putin's going to talk to China, and the question I raise is, what are they going to talk about? What does Putin want? Because this conference is just bullshit. It's really about cover for Putin and Xi to meet. So what do we got going on here? Does anybody, Mike, what do you think?
I don't I still think that Trump is still on the side of Ukraine and the EU. We're going to know more about what the security guarantee plan from Ukraine looks like a little bit later in the week. And they're supposed to release it. But as far as it goes,
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I'll
get,
say
go ahead, Dean, go ahead.
no clue. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to frame. We talked about this a little bit earlier, Professor Kenny and Deborah, that anytime that Russia and China get together in any type of talks, you've got Putin going over to Beijing in another couple of days, and they're planning a big parade before that summit gets off. We're really looking at how is that going to impact just on an economic stage or just geopolitical stage. How is that going to impact what the U.S. would like to do, a U.S.-led coalition or U.S.-led international order, and how would that how would that actually play? Um, I'm more concerned about the. We also talked about the fact that if Russia is going to sell more um, products, oil to China, that just lets the Russia war machine continue unabated. Um, and I know that we're putting some sanctions in place. We've already got some high tariffs on China, but I don't think that's going to deter that particular arrangement. More than anything, I think China is very interested to see how the Ukraine-Russia conflict war plays out. If for anything, but how they view and how they would what their strategy is with Taiwan. So I think it makes sense for us to, from the United States point of view, to stay vigilant on this. And this is a chess game that's being played, and Russia can absolutely go over there. But I think ML, I think you were going this direction that President Trump he's engaged now. I think more than anything, I like the fact I didn't understand before why he wasn't engaged. He was treating Russia um, as an equal. You could argue that he elevated Russia on the stage. I would argue that he was already there. The guy's got nukes. We're not looking to antagonize at that point. I wish he would have gotten engaged faster. It didn't happen in the day that he said during the campaign, but now he is engaged and he is in deal in he is looking for a deal. What drives me just a little bit nuts from my point of view is that the mainstream media is so concerned about everything that President Trump does now with this when nothing, absolutely nothing was done for the last 4 years. President Biden said, hey, they better not cross that line. They better not go in. No, no, actually, just it was one word, don't. And he crossed it and nothing was done. Similar to what happened with Crimea under the Obama administration. So you've got engagement now, and the mainstream media is never going to be satisfied with that. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next there, but I'm glad that President Trump is completely engaged.
I just think that China they play their cards so well. They're just going to
Absolutely.
they just sit back and let these other knuckleheads, including us, diddle around in this stuff, and then they figure out what their financial move is. But what I will say, and by the way, I've always saw, China's obviously one of the biggest countries in the world, but I think militarily they haven't won a war in God knows how many 200 years or whatever. So I'm not worried about them there. Plus, I don't think they're interested in that. They want to show force, but I don't think they'd ever use it because they got to worry about 3 billion people and economics, and their economy. So, and without us, they have no economy. So it's a big problem there. So we'll see what goes on. Yep, that's okay, Evan. I'm going to bring you in first, actually, because I'm going to start calling on people now. And I thought we did a decent job. Thank you, Dean and Deborah and Mike. Um, I'm going to ask Evan to come in first and tell me what's going on in your mind with all we've talked about today, Evan.
Well, I would say the first thing is on the crime thing. I think Daryl touched on it with his note about the FBI statistics. You can't talk about it without realistically talking about race. It's the 8 million pound elephant in the room,
Hmm.
and everyone's going to sound like a racist if they actually start talking numbers. But those are the realities, and we know who the biggest victims of the crimes are, and we know who the biggest perpetrators of the crimes are. And if you're not going to address it, then it's just going to go on in perpetuity. But my real comment was about Kenny China.
Hmm.
China's demographics are faltering. They're not reproducing at the rates they were going to. So when you talk about $3 billion, I'm sorry,
3
3 billion,
billion people. Yeah.
3 billion people, I apologize. I think they're one of the big issues that they're facing is that their population is aging dramatically,
Hmm.
not reproducing. The kids don't want to have kids. They're kind of like a lot of kids in this country. They're living in their parents' basement, or in
Yep.
China, they don't have a basement, maybe they have a back room. Um, and they don't have the capacity to maintain employment for them. And you say it's all about money, and that I think you're absolutely right about, but it's money as it controls their population.
Hmm.
Um, they don't have to, that since Mao, their philosophy has been if we lose 300 million people, well, we've got another X hundred millions of people, right?
Yeah.
So they
Yep.
don't give
Fair.
a shit.
Right.
So I think that is and I don't understand the mindset, and I know you got a military background, so I'm genuinely not questioning that. The mindset that China is not a military threat. They're building these artificial islands for more naval bases. They are, in essence, they're closing off the channels for trade. That's all it is, right? It's all about that whole part of the world is about controlling trade. Since it became a worldwide economy, the straits there
Yep.
are the most important area on the planet. It all goes through there. And so, not all, but a vast majority of products go through there. And the control of that gives people economic control. So I think to say that they were way ahead on the scale of these, what are they, hypersonic missiles, and their Navy has built up to an outrageous amount of ships at this point. I'm just saying I wouldn't take them for granted.
Well,
I know
yeah.
I had a debate
Mhm.
with someone who's probably to the right of everybody here on here, and I was saying, I'm not that worried about China because they're having a debate about the Navy because they're just not. But here's what they'll do: they don't give a shit how much money they spend on it. They'll take it from wherever they want and they'll put it there because Xi has all the control. So
Yeah.
sorry to dominate. I'm gonna mute.
No, 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 that's good, dude. That's great. And like my argument is that, they until you get in the game, you know, then I'm not worried about you. I talked to somebody about this in depth, and we were like, if we went at it with Russia, what's China going to do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They're going to stand on the sideline, you know.
China's always going to do what's best for China.
Of course.
The
And
Chinese don't trust the Russians and vice versa.
right, and that's why my argument has always been, like I said, in the past, Putin's break even on oil is $50 a barrel. He can't survive on that, right? So if he's getting $79 a barrel, he's good. China's giving him $79 a barrel. Well, if you and let's say that's his absolute number. He needs $79 a barrel to keep the war going and whatever. And China's his number one customer. Well, if the Saudis go, "Hey, China, we'll sell you oil at $78.99 a barrel." They'll leave Russia and buy from the Saudis. That, like, in terms of philosophy, they'll go for, whatever's good for them
There's no
economically.
loyalty there.
No, 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 not at all. Okay, so we're gonna bring in Dan Olivo, who feels like he's under he's under siege today, right? Because he's the big dem that we
Today,
have.
every day.
All right, Dan, give it to us, buddy.
Okay, so I mean, if I'm listening to this whole conversation from the beginning, all I'm hearing is Democrat bad, Republicans nothing. Like there's no crime in Shreveport, Louisiana, or any Republican cities. It's all Democratic cities run by Democrat mayors. There's no crime anywhere. And that's the conversation. What I'm
Okay,
more
go
worried
ahead, Dan.
about
Yep, go ahead, keep
what I'm
going.
more worried about with the military in the streets is what I've been talking about for a while. What Bill Maher addressed during Trump's first term was that Trump is going to not want to leave power. Now, when that happened the first time in Trump 1.0, there was guardrails and certain brave Republicans that did not allow that to happen. This time it's different. This time he's using the military in the streets, and come election time, you know, if the election doesn't go his way, he could use that military power to do whatever he wants. And that's what's scary. So Bill Maher addressed it over the weekend. He said, so you have in the Capitol a sort of permanent police presence. So when an election dispute might come up, okay, it's been deleted here. Hold on a second. Anyway, he brought it up, and it's a concern because we have this military presence now. We're in a military state, and you know, it's not good.
Yeah, I would argue that, and listen, I could be totally wrong. You know what I mean? Are you muted, Dean? I'm sorry, Dean. Yeah, you're unmuted now. Um, I tell you this, we have talked about this in the chat on the two-way and whatever. But if Trump thinks he's going for another term, he's going to lose a lot of support. I think, and
It's not
plus,
so much that he would stay in office, but that he would create a situation where the Democrats, if they win, can't assume
okay.
power.
Okay. All
Hmm.
right. I don't know if I'm going to stand up for that. I know me personally as a Republican, I'm not going to put up with that. If if JD Vance loses to Andy Bashir by one vote and then they try and pull some bullshit, I'm out. I'm not out on the Republicans on that election. I'm out on that. That's me personally. I don't know what anybody else feels about.
Kenny,
Yeah,
that
I
was
would
what
just
was
say,
attempted the first time.
say
Well,
again.
Biden won.
No,
Clearly won, and it took a couple of weeks, a week to figure that out. But he got 81 million votes. He won. What
I
Trump
know, but
pulled
you
with
voted for
January,
Trump again, right?
no, no, I told you Bobby Kennedy I supported this year.
My
So
fault. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. So the problem, the way I see it, is I just don't listen. I could be totally naive, right? Based on the January 6th stuff, because I kind of just that's in my background. It's behind me, but I just don't see that happening. I just see JD taking over, or Marco. Maybe JD and Marco go at it and whatever. I don't. I just see Trump not. I don't think there's going to be any election interference in terms of trying to change an election, especially
Getting rid of
on any.
mail-in ballots, military
Well, listen, I got to be
presence,
honest with you. I'm
intimidating
I'm
people at
I'm
the
not a fan of
polling.
mail-in ballots. I am not a fan of mail-in ballots at all. I'm fine with overseas mail-in ballots from military, but the idea that people can now just fill out paper ballots and put them in the mail or drop them in drop boxes, I don't think that's secure.
Well, that's how Trump and people in his administration voted, so they didn't have a problem with it.
They had a problem with it in 2020. So,
But that's what they used to vote.
listen, he's talking about stopping mail-in voting. I'm all for it. You
Okay.
listen, voting for president is your biggest vote. At least I think, right? So if you can't get off the couch and get to your polling place and vote, then I don't know what
I'll
to
go a
tell
little
you.
bit. I'll go a little bit different direction on that, Professor
Yeah,
Kenny. That
yeah.
if the dep I'm kind of in the same point. He's trolling. I know he's got a bunch of Trump 28 stuff. I think that came out on the Bill Maher show. Also, he's got all of this paraphernalia, and I consider this just a complete troll. And if the Democrats focus too much on this, I think they're going to miss their opportunity to really get ahead of
Was he
whether.
trolling on J6? Was he trolling on J6?
Yeah, yeah. As far as I'm concerned, with that's been adjudicated. We've had this conversation before. It's
All
been
right.
taken
All
care of.
right.
Well,
Can I,
I mean,
He's
if you don't like
exhibiting
the
the same
opinion, you're going to ask
behaviors.
me. Yeah, if you don't like the opinion that I'll just say again, if the Democrats want to focus on this, they're going to miss their opportunity to ding Marco Rubio and JD Vance, and it just might end up being too late. Now, I know we didn't have Gavin Newsom on. Well, no, I won't go there. I won't go there.
All right, listen, let's get more people.
Wait, can
can I
you
s-
bring Jackie
can I
in?
just wait? Can I
Yeah.
just weigh in?
Yep, go ahead, Deb.
Because as someone who's like kind of been a Democrat, I can say to you, Dan, I have like I can hold like a 5% chance of what you're saying is like I don't rule it out. Like I'm not in rule out because just because of the fact like he has also already marshaled these things. I really highly don't think it's going to happen, but I don't go, oh, that's crazy, right? I see why people are afraid of it. And yet I also have a feeling that I think we'll watch when we see if the troops move out of these places, if he tries using them for other purposes. So I keep my eye on it. I don't go like, I'm going to go snooze, nothing bad's going to happen. And at the same time, I haven't put like extra like worry into it, but I don't go, oh, those
So
stupid
why don't
people
we
that think
speak
that.
if it's even 5% that you're worried about it, why don't more people speak out about it? I don't like this. I don't like this. This is not good.
Yeah,
This
I
no,
have,
I'm not saying
yeah,
you.
I
I'm just saying
understand. Yeah,
generally.
I understand the use of it. I also get like that, right? So that's just where I see. I just want to say it because I know sometimes you can feel like complete like alone here on this, and generally speaking, I'm not sitting here going, uh-oh, like I'm biting my nail. You know what I mean? I'm not at that level of it at all. And I had the concerns about when certain things were being done with COVID and how we were being kind of treated and controlled and all of that. And I didn't like that. I didn't necessarily think that was going to escalate, but also, anyway, that's a whole other story. But I just want to let you know, like I do. There's some little bit of like,
Well, if you don't like COVID, you know who was the president at the time.
the cities and what the cities were doing and how draconian they were being were sort of up to
Well, he
local
could have moved the
management.
military in then, right? Like he's doing now. He went
I
along
think
with
I
it.
think the Democrats
He
like
went
that
along
better.
with it.
Anyway,
All
done
right,
with that.
hey, let's bring in Haley.
So very interesting conversation. I do tend to agree with Dan more on this. First of all, I think when regarding the mail-in voting, if Trump was smart, instead of eradicating it, because unfortunately everything is going towards like, technology and apps and AI and all of that stuff. So instead of eradicating it, he should be pushing the Republicans to accept it, and it would just do much better for him in the and much better for Republicans in upcoming elections if they were to go the route of, instead of fighting it, just accepting it and trying to make it, available for everybody. But when it comes to the crime, I do not like the military or National Guard being used for circumstances, that aren't the norm, like
Yeah, it's political.
right, like
It
civil
should be,
unrest
yeah,
or
and it shouldn't be
natural
done. I
disasters.
agree.
Right. This is totally political. My issue is, regardless of it being political or not, logically, I think everybody can agree that putting in a mass amount of National Guard or any type of force is going to decrease crime within this small amount of time, just because logically somebody sees a National Guardsman standing on the corner who wants to commit a crime, he's not going to do it then and there. My problem is that these criminals are not going to just stop doing crime because the National Guard is there. They're just going to wait until they're gone, until the National Guard is gone, until Trump has decided he's done enough in DC and it's politically politically fine for him to take things out. If he really cared about crime, he would be doing much more than just sending in the National Guard. He would actually be trying to work with the mayor in DC and actually trying to get something passed or to get more resources to the police, because we all know that more police work decreases crime. A more police force in problematic areas decrease crime. So if he really cared about actually dealing with the crime, he would be doing more than just 30 days, here's a surge, so it looks good for me. And then I'm going to see if I'm going to continue it for another 30 days because it still looks good for me. And then that will be the end of the issue. Because our politics are so, like 24-hour news cycle. So he's going to move on to the next issue and everyone's going to forget about crime. And that's just how it's going to go. Just like it's been going for the last, since he's went back into office. So I think this is totally political. And if he really cared, he would be actually trying to work with these mayors in these cities. And regardless of who the mayor is, big cities have always had crime. This is just a side effect of a big city. And regardless of if it's blue or red, we should all be just trying to work together on at least something that everyone can agree is a problem. So it's
Yeah.
just political.
Everything is too politicized. And now, crime and whatever. Michael, thank you for coming on board.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of address maybe the fundamental misunderstanding about presidential power and where it resides. It doesn't reside with the individual, it resides with the office. So this fear that Trump might not leave, it once the election happens, once the inauguration happens, the power transfers to whoever is elected. So whether someone's sitting behind the Resolute desk in the office makes no difference. So this kind of paranoid fear that Trump somehow would find a way to stay in office is really unrealistic according to our system of government. So I mean, as far as there's been some discussion I've seen in the chat about the prison system. I retired from the Federal Bureau of Prisons in 2014 and the Department of Justice. The prison system is not autonomous. It functions as part of the Department of Justice. They don't make the rules. Let me put this a little bit farther. Maybe it's a little bit off topic, but the Bureau of Prisons does best as a warehouse. It doesn't function well as an education system or as a health system or a rehabilitation system.
Right.
And so the prison system, by adding additional goals and everything else, just frustrates the ability of what they can do well. If you go back and talk with Kathy Hawks Sawyer, the former director of the Bureau of Prisons, she'd probably be able to speak more informatively on this. But trying to make it responsible for curing all these other ills is never going to work. It does a good job at warehousing people, keeping inmates relatively safe, except if you happen to be in the Metropolitan Detention Center in New York and the cameras aren't working, which is a whole discussion, which is hard to believe. And I have some theories on all of that.
Yeah.
But this whole discussion back to the president, it resides with the office, not the individual. The minute the transfer of power takes place, whoever's in the office before and is not reelected is powerless.
Yeah.
Unless you're talking about another much larger issue. And then it involves the military and the leaders and those kind of things that have decided to form a coup d'etat against the newly elected person. And that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
I do want to comment on that. I see Dan nodding too, because I do have like family members who, and I'm not sure what their news sources are or how they're coming to this, but there are people who are thinking that a lot of people are having loyalty to Pete Hegseth in the military. And, if things don't go well in the next election, that because of their loyalty to Hegseth, they might do something that's not what they ought to be doing. What you're saying with the office, they go with the person. I'm not saying I agree with this, but I do know, and not Dan's on, that is something that their people are thinking this. Just to point that out.
Well, there's always a possibility of irrational fear.
Yeah.
And that's not always a bad thing to contemplate that. But we're in deeper dog poo if that's the case, and there's other remedies that have to take place. But I think if we understand that the power transfers with the office, not the individual, that helps people to get a little bit farther down the road and not worry about those things.
Yeah.
What about if Mike Pence did what Trump wanted him to do that day? And not
it still doesn't make a difference, Dan.
Yeah.
Because the power resides with the office, not the individual. So there's no substance to that contention.
Yeah, Mike Pence was never going to do that either.
Thank God.
Let's bring in Alan, and then we're going to bring in Evan to finish it up, and then we will extend the show in terms of I will stop the live stream, I'll stop the recording, and then I'm going to make Mike the host, and then we'll do the post show from there because I got work to do, so I might have to dip out. So Alan.
So with the crime in DC, it is a political maneuver to do what happened on the border. He's showing massive force to create deterrence, right? So I think this isn't going to extend beyond 30 days. I think crime will steadily decline and he'll start working with the mayors. But this is like what he did on Inauguration Day, just flood the zone and essentially shut down crime in DC, and give other mayors a playbook to enforce crime. What I really wanted to talk about was what we were talking about earlier with Kilmer Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man, a quote unquote. The DOJ makes deals like this all the time. They give you, option A, which is bad, or option B, which is really bad, or option C, we're going to throw the full force of the DOJ at you, and you're going to deal with extreme consequences. Um, and if he was smart and his lawyers weren't just playing politics and wanted to do what was in the best interest of their client, he should have taken the deal and gone to Costa Rica, because Uganda is going to be no picnic for him, in my opinion.
Okay. And we'll finish up with Evan.
Okay, quick. Two things. If you look at Ribbon's response to Dan, I think that's a really appropriate summary of the topic we were just on. And as it relates to Trump and calling in the military to DC, to me, it's the blind squirrel theory, right? If he does something as a political maneuver, but it has a positive result, I'll take the positive result. When my kid was in school in Maryland, Baltimore, I wouldn't let him go 2 blocks outside of the campus. He had a 2 block perimeter because it just wasn't safe.
Yeah.
And that was at the time, that was immediately after Freddie Gray.
Hmm.
And so it was a war zone.
Yeah.
So I would think that you can quite I happen to agree with Dan, his comment about J6 about Mike Pence. It's easy to say that Mike Pence would never have done it. The mere fact that it was requested is the alarming part, frankly. Um, but I can assure you, having spent many weekends in the city of Baltimore, had a National Guard presence been there as a parent, I would have been thrilled. You can talk about the constitutionality of it, the appropriateness of it. Not everything is a precedent. When Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, somehow the world still survived. Not everything is a precedent, not everything leads to absolute chaos. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be guarded about it. So a lot of things
Here's,
Dan said, I happen to agree with. I think you need to be careful. And I
yeah.
don't believe for a second if Trump had his faculties when he was 83 years old and had the ability to run again and it wasn't constitutionally barred, well, even if it is constitutionally barred, I'm sure he'd try and do it.
Yeah, I think ego-wise, Trump wants to be president forever, and he wants to be emperor, and he literally wants to have a budget that'll put his face on Mount Rushmore, right? Literally, they'll carve out the stone next to Roosevelt or whatever. I fully agree with that. I just think if he's convinced that he's had a good presidency and he can end on a high note, there's no way the JD Vances and the DeMarco Rubios of the world are gonna get on board with this guy trying to stay on. So I don't, and like Michael says, it's about the office, not the individual. I brought Ribbon in because of what you said, Evan. So Ribbon, do you want to kind of enlighten us? Because I didn't even read the chat. Can you enlighten us your engagement with Dan on what Evan was referring to, and then we'll finish it up there.
I guess he was just everybody's been going around about whether he would not leave office, bringing in the troops and taking over the cities. And what blows my mind is the level of the lack of awareness with the state and federal powers and what truly everyone has authority over. And you're not going to have the federal government, military coming into streets uninvited throughout the country. That's why they're not coming into any Democratic city run in a red state. They're not coming into LA other than on federal pretenses with ICE.
Okay.
He didn't come in for the riots. Secondly, he's ego driven. Do you think he wants another asterisk like J6 under his second term if he's got JD Vance and Rubio standing in the running? I mean, he's the ultimate troll to have Democrats getting so emotionally in the feels that they're looking the other way and not paying attention to all the other things that he could be doing,
Yeah.
nefarious or not.
I'm gonna finish it up with this in terms of a political move. So you bring the National Guard into these blue cities, right? The Democrats have a hard time trying to find the right message about it or against it, right? And crime goes down for, let's say, the month or 3 months the National Guard is there, right? Crime goes down. See, I did it. I knocked crime down. Now he pulls the National Guard out and the crime goes up. And he goes, see, without my National Guard, you guys can't handle your city. The crime went up. It's a win-win for this guy. And this is all Stephen Miller. This is all President Miller. So that's how I see it as, this is listen, these guys are really playing politics like it's the Super Bowl every day. So, all right. So, having said that, and thanks, Ribbon, for clarifying that. And I hope you guys all stay on and keep the chat going. Mike, I'm going to make you the host after I stop the recording and the Zoom, and I'll try and jump back in when I can. But I do have work to do. But I thought we had a very good show with Dean and Deborah, and we like to keep it going this week. I'll see everybody tomorrow at 9.